Best-selling author and American psychologist Mary Pfeiffer said this: "We live in a world filled with language. Language imparts identity, meaning, and perspective to our human community. Writers are either polluters or part of the cleanup team. Just as the language of power and greed has the potential to destroy us, the language of reason and empathy has the power to save us. Writers can inspire a kinder, fairer, more beautiful world, or invite selfishness, stereotyping, and violence. Writers can unite people or divide them." In this book show podcast, host, confidence coach Susan Axelrod asks women authors a simple question: which kind of writer are you? She invites each guest to step into the confidence zone to proclaim how her book can inspire. If you are seeking inspiration to create your legacy, take out your pen and pad. Your book, My Time, starts now. Hello, friends. I'm delighted to have you joining me for this episode of your book, My Time. I created this podcast to give authors voice. I am an author of 3 self-published books. And when I had those books published, all I wanted to do was speak about them and share my reason for writing them. And so this podcast gives other authors that opportunity. Today, I honestly couldn't be more delighted to be welcoming a fellow alumna from Mount Holyoke College, my uncommon sister, Judy Bloomberg, who is the author of an amazing book, which I cannot wait to talk about and hear more about today, Always a Traveler, Never a Tourist, in search of people and places on the road less traveled. Hi, Judy. How are you today?
Hi. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, because I love to talk about my travels and my book as well. And so I'm so thrilled that you're giving me a chance to do that. And let me just quickly, before we start, let you see the book for those of you who are intending to purchase it later on Amazon or through me.
Oh, it's beautiful. Can you hold it up one more time?
Of course.
Oh, it's beautiful. For people who are listening to this by audio, I encourage you to go to the link that I will have posted in the comments and see this beautiful book.
And for those of you who are curious, the person on the cover, this is from the Omo region of Ethiopia, and this is a woman of the Hamar tribe who is sitting watching a coming of age ceremony with her baby.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely beautiful. Well, Judy, I am delighted to know you. I am delighted to have the opportunity for this conversation, to hear about your book, your travels, and I want to get started with this question. What is the story behind the story of your book?
Well, I always loved to travel, and adventure travel has kind of been my passion. I have a sentence in the preface of my book about my desire for adventure travel. I say, not the kind where you climb Mount Everest to prove to yourself and the world that you have amazing endurance and ability to withstand cold, but the around the world in 80 days kind of adventure, where you set off for countries whose names you can't even pronounce, to explore other cultures and other peoples, to learn how we're different, and perhaps even more importantly, how we're the same. And I come back to that, how we're different and how we're the same, a lot, because we forget sometimes how much we may have in common with a person who lives in a traditional society that's very different from ours. We all kind of want the same things in life. So adventure kind of started about 50 years ago when I was going on my honeymoon. And back at that time, the thing to do was to go for a week to the Caribbean and stay in the most luxurious resort you possibly could. And that was not my cup of tea. So I convinced my husband that we should go for 2 months, no itinerary, Europe on $5 a day, and we should rent a car and travel all over Europe. And it's only now, as an adult and a parent myself that I realized how much anxiety I must have put my parents through.
Yes.
That was before cell phones, before the internet. They literally had no idea how to get in touch with us. We would just say to them, we're going to be in Paris around this time. If you need to reach us, contact the American Express office.
Yes.
They never did. So then fast forward to around 1987, when my kids were finally old enough to go off to camp and we could have some free time in the summer, my husband decided that we should go on a cruise. We had never gone on a cruise before. So I started researching this and I discovered, oh, you could go on Carnival to the Caribbean, or you could go on a little ship to the Amazon. So guess which one I chose. We went on a very small ship of about 10 cabins, and we went on the Napo River, which is a tributary of the Amazon in Ecuador. And we saw, 12-inch spiders and tree frogs and people who, were living very traditionally and so on. And for sure, I was hooked. So we tried to keep this up over the years, but of course we were limited because we had jobs and we had kids in school and so on and so forth.
Well, I just want to interrupt for a second and ask you, so you obviously had a yen or a sense of adventure, wanting adventure.
Right. Absolutely.
Because even with the honeymoon story, instead of going to something that was organized, you went to something where you could explore Europe even, right?
Yeah. So we kept this up for a number of years. Finally, in 2012, I decided to retire. It was slightly early retirement, and I wasn't really burned out, but I really wanted to have more time to travel. And I kind of went out of control. In 2015, that was a landmark year because I actually traveled to all 7 continents in the space of 1 year.
I see.
Pretty amazing.
Were you alone in that travel?
Well, I was with my husband.
With your husband, okay.
And of course, going to Antarctica, you don't go to Antarctica alone. But we went on a very small expedition ship. Mm-hmm. So over the last 50 years, I'd say I've been to about 120 different countries, depending on how you count them. And as I said, on every different continent. And so obviously I've accumulated thousands and thousands of pictures, which I used to share with my friends or whatever. And I loved sharing them, but it was a very limited group that saw them. And then COVID came. And as we know, COVID had us all sitting at home with nothing to do and binging on Facebook and things like Facebook. And there was a challenge that went around on Facebook called the Travel Challenge. And the goal, some of you may have seen it or even participated in it. The instruction was you were supposed to post 10 pictures, one a day for 10 days. So somebody challenged me. I did that for 10 days. And then I said, I've got thousands of pictures. I'm going to keep going. So I kept going one a day for something like 108 or 110 days. And what started happening is that a huge number of people who were seeing my pictures for the first time started saying, these are amazing pictures. You should write a book. You should make a table book out of this. I said, that's crazy. I am not an author. I've never done this before. Oh my goodness, I'm afraid, what if it's not successful? All the things that people go through when they try and do something like that. But I got convinced. So it was very interesting to me because, as I said, I'd never produced a book before. So there was a huge learning curve, not just culling through all these pictures and figuring out which ones were the most interesting and which ones I thought would be the most well-received, but also figuring out how to format the photos, doing the professional photo editing, doing the book formatting, understanding how to create a cover, understanding how to market the book. And I made a promise to myself when I decided to do this, that I was not going to use help. I mean, I did have help in the editing. It was help from friends. I had one friend who was an author. I had one friend who was a professional photographer, and one friend who was an artist. And I showed them all, and they made wonderful, gave me wonderful advice.
That was your team, your advising team.
Exactly. But other than that, I did not use any professional marketing, any professional photo, cover work or anything of that. So it was a real challenge, but it was an exciting challenge. It was something where I learned something that I never expected I would learn. You get to a certain age and you're retired and you think, what is there left to do? And this was something that was just new and exciting and had to do with a topic that I loved. So it was a gift. I don't think of COVID as a gift, but on this level, it was a gift.
So I call this a COVID blessing. I've done a lot of work over these few years in the area of COVID blessings and bringing consciousness to the good, the positive, the beauty, the grace that might have been offered during a time that is arguably one of the most extraordinary times in the history of the world. And so this was a COVID blessing. I also want to say that I work with women in the second half of life. I'm a coach for women in the second half of life to sort of rekindle passion for life and love and work and, impetus and impact and outcomes. And so I love what you just said about, at a certain stage, you kind of feel like been there, did all that. What am I going to do now? And here you undertook the entire passion project of creating a book that led to this beautiful book, which I already posted the link to on Amazon. And I want to let people know that it's also available directly from Judy, a signed copy, if you're interested. So also, the second question that I ask authors is, why is your book worth our time to read? And you've answered it in so many ways. I really want to go back to this idea of what you said right in the beginning, which is we're all human. We all kind of want the same things in life, even in your exploration of traditional cultures. And I can't think of anything more profound that would be worth the time for people to read than your experience with these different cultures.
Thanks. The book is a collection of about 300 color photos of people and daily life in some of the world's least known places, along with anecdotes about traveling off the beaten path. You won't find pictures of the Eiffel Tower in here or of Big Ben. I obviously, having been to about 120 different countries, I couldn't talk about all of them, and I didn't really want to talk about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those countries, it's been there, done that. People know about Paris, but people don't know so much about Papua New Guinea or Ethiopia or Mongolia or Bhutan. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. I have a fascination with people who are living traditional lives, kind of the way their ancestors have done for thousands of years. And I also love festivals. Festivals are when you see people dressed up in their finest outfits of their tribes, singing, dancing. There's one section in the book that deals with the Goroka Festival, which is a festival that happens in Papua New Guinea. And it's a collection of probably 200 different tribes. It's not something that's put on for tourists. The backstory of it is that until 1975, Papua New Guinea was under the control of Australia. There were like 800 different tribes. They were always fighting with each other. So the country of Australia came up with the idea of having a big festival where all the tribes could show off to each other, to demonstrate their costumes, their songs, their dances. There was only one problem. Some of you may have thought about it. They gave out awards for the best costume, the best dance. So then they had more fighting, only this time it was fighting over your tribe got first prize and we deserved it. So what the Australian government did was they stopped giving out prizes and they made it into a showcase. But they still have it. They get maybe 100, 150 tourists and maybe 3,000 local people. In addition to the people who are dressed up from the tribes, they get something like 3,000 local people who come to see all the tribes. So there's fabulous pictures of that in the book. And many.
What did you say? What is this called again?
It's called the Goroka Festival, Goroka, and it happens in September every year in Papua New Guinea.
Oh my gosh, the Garoka Festival, which is a showcase of tribes. The festival itself is held in Papua New Guinea, and it's sponsored by the Australian government.
Well, no, because now Papua New Guinea since 1975 is independent. It was originated.
Oh, so originated by the Australian government.
Now they've kept it going.
So I wanted to repeat this because, Judy, this is your opportunity to inspire. And I'm all about inspire. That's why I wanted to have you on my podcast. When we connected up on our college Facebook page, and then I said, hey, is anybody an author? And you said, yes, I'm an author. And then I went and looked at your book. I'm like, this is awesome. Now I'm intrigued and inspired, even though I just want to go to Greece. But I'm calling it in right now as an opportunity for women in the second half of life or anyone listening to understand that you are going to learn about these things in this book. Something like the Goroka Festival is like ridiculous. When you said only 100 or 200 tourists come, I realize, okay, maybe it's hard to get there or whatever, but we can literally enlighten people about this crazy experience. I can't imagine what an amazing experience it must have been.
Well, I went to a festival in Papua New Guinea that was even more remote than that. And it was a festival for a particular tribe called the Kalam tribe in the area of Simbai, which is off the beaten path, even for people who go to Papua New Guinea. And the only way to get to this village where the tribe was having their festival was to go on MAF, which stands for Missionary Air Fellowship. Meaning, even, there are few options for, air travel in Papua New Guinea, but even the standard options are not available to go to Simbai. So this is the airline that takes missionaries to the most remote places in the world. And that's how we got to Simbai and the Kalam Culture Festival. And there's some great photos in there as well. One of the things that the Kalam tribe is famous for is they make these huge headdresses that look like they have green beads on them, but in fact, they're green beetle shells. And the tribe collects these beetle shells, decorates their enormous headdresses with them. And there's some great pictures in the book of that. So
I want to tell you
pictures from all over the world.
I want to tell you, my heart is honestly, truly, genuinely, my heart is beating a little fast here. I'm having I really want to ask you, is part of the intention of your book to inspire people also to travel possibly, and obviously to buy the book, to see the pictures, to experience the experiences through the pictures and the anecdotes about traveling? But do you also have an interest in inspiring people to travel in this way?
Of course. I mean, of course I want to sell a book. That's a given. But I love talking about this. And I will say something. You mentioned that people could get the book from me autographed at a promotional price if they emailed alwaysatraveler2@gmail.com. Well, if you have questions, and even if you're not intending to buy the book, if you email me at that email address, I will make every effort to answer your personal questions, because I just like to share this stuff. It's stuff that so few people know. These traditional tribes and peoples are disappearing. Most people will never see them. As I said, there are things that we have in common with them that we don't even realize.
Yeah,
and
I wrote that down.
We interact in the same way that, kind of a little bit off track, when people started coming out of the closet and people started having friends who were LGBTQ, and they knew someone personally like that, they had different feelings about those people because they knew the person personally. Well, if you get familiar, it would be great if you did it in person, but even if you get familiar through a book, if you get to understand these people a little bit, your attitude toward them changes completely. And that's so important for the future of the world. I understand other people and other cultures. So that's really my goal for what I want people to do.
It's so beautiful. I have chills from this conversation. I really feel that there are and will be people listening to this conversation who have a yearning, even a spark to travel, to see exotic things, but they don't think that they can really do it. They can't afford it. They don't have time. Now, to be honest, I'm writing notes, and you did say you took an early retirement. You weren't ready to sit in a rocking chair. You wanted to travel. And then I asked you if you traveled alone. You said, no, of course, your husband, traveled with you. So I assume he was in retirement as well to go off to these places. And okay, but there's so many people who are in that stage right now. Whether they're unemployed for various reasons, whether they took early retirement, whether they're in full-on retirement stage, the opportunity is available. I just want to tell you, I'm so intrigued with what you shared about festivals and how you love festivals and the way you described attending, viewing, and then also even getting to some of these festivals. Yeah. It's so intriguing. The word inspiration is coming up for me over and over in energy that I really am so happy that we're having this conversation today. And I want people to be inspired to say yes to the idea of this first, the possibility of this next, and then even maybe the eventuality. So I want to ask you, what do you want people to do from reading this book? So you mentioned to me that you have some tips for people, and I wanted to make sure we get these in.
Tip number one is, if you don't already have a passport, get one. Even if you only go to Canada, get a passport and get someplace other than where you are. Start to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And that doesn't mean you have to travel to Antarctica like I did, or to Papua New Guinea. It could be, I've never been out of the country, so I'm going to go out of the country for the first time. It could be, I've always traveled with a tour group. I'm going to go to Paris or London or wherever on my own and wander around and see what I can see. Be curious about people who are different from you, whether it's international, whether it's local, as I said, and embrace those differences. Seek them out. Don't always try and surround yourself with people who are just like you. I mean, that's part of the problem of what's going on in our country today, is we only want to hang out with people who are just like us.
And I just want to let you know, I'm writing these out in the comments, so for real time for people to see. And the word I have for this that has come up for me several times is humanity, Judy. You are just speaking about humanity, and you're speaking to humanity. So I love this. Okay, so keep going. Seek them out. Don't just surround yourself with the same people.
Never stop learning about the world. You can do that on the internet, which we couldn't do 50 years ago, but lots of stuff out there. You can do it through books. You can do it through actual travel, but be curious. Be curious about the world and try and learn more. Don't be afraid to travel without a guide. So many people are afraid to do that. And yeah, you might, your reservation might get messed up at the hotel, or you might get lost, or you might miss the best souvenir shop in Paris. But what you gain instead is invaluable. One of the things is, if people see you in a big group, they stay away from you. If people see you by yourself, they're as curious about you as you are of them. I have a wonderful picture. It's not in the book, but I'll tell you it was in Myanmar, which used to be Burma. And I stopped on the side of the road to get a snack. And this group of guys came running up to me. They were in traditional dress, but they had cell phones. And they wanted to get a picture with me. And when I put that picture on the internet, everybody thinks that I asked the guys to come to take a picture with me.
With you. Mm-hmm.
They asked me to come and take a picture with them. And there are so many experiences that I have like that. Another one is I attended this wedding in Western Mongolia with 300 Kazakh people and no non-Kazakh people except my husband and I. And we became the guests of honor.
Oh my
gosh.
They
were so excited to have an American come to their wedding that they just went all out. We were as popular as the bride and groom.
Well, how was it that you attended this?
Well, we have in a place like Western Mongolia, you have to have a guide. You don't have an organized tour, but you find somebody local.
A local guide.
To guide you around. And so we chose somebody from Western Mongolia because very briefly, Mongolia has only about 3 million people. 1.5 million of them live in the capital in Ulaanbaatar. And the other 1.5 million live in the entire rest of the country, which is about as big as France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and half of Europe combined. So it's very sparse, and we purposely got a guide that was from that area, so he knew that area. So one night he said to us, would you like to go to a Kazakh wedding? And we thought, oh, it's going to be one of these demonstration weddings where they dress up and show. No, he had a friend who was getting married. He said, I'm guiding some people who are American. They're very interested in our culture. Would it be okay if they came to the wedding? And we got there and we sat at this table. Nobody spoke English except one guy who there was a lot of drinking of vodka. And this one guy had things he knew how to say. He would bang the glass, he'd fill the glass, bang it on the table and go, okay, thank you. And when he said thank you, everybody had to drink.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
It's like the best thing I did in Mongolia. And I would never have done that if we hadn't been independent.
So I wrote down, I'm writing, like I said, find local guides to help you get around. This is fantastic. We only have a few more minutes. First of all, here's what I would like to offer you, because in my world, this is how I do my business. I feel the energy, the enthusiasm, the fun, the deep personal inspiration that you're in. It's your ocean when you're talking about this. So let's go back to our college Facebook page and say, hey, we're going to offer a free Zoom call if anybody wants to join us to hear about your book and your conversation. Not a paid anything. Let's just give you more time to talk about this, because podcasts
that would be great. The other thing I want to say real quick before we end is I do have both a Facebook page called Always a Traveler, Never a Tourist, and also a Facebook group called Always a Traveler, Never a Tourist. And anybody from this group who's hearing this who would like to be part of it, you can go online. It'll ask you to answer a few questions, but you know, if you're not an axe murderer, you will get approved to enter the group. And we talk about a lot of this stuff. And I've had lots of people join the group who have similar stories to tell. You know, a lot of them are looking from the outside in, but there's a fair number of them who are on the inside who have good stories. So please consider joining that group.
I love it. It's so inspired and so fun and so needed today. I cannot say enough about your message of humanity. Learn about people who appear to be different from yourself, and you will learn that underneath, as humans, we do have the same needs and the same interests, and a desire to be in humanity together. I've gotten that so much from our conversation today. I love that you have a Facebook page. I love that you have a Facebook group. I've already written them down in the comments. Always a Traveler, Never a Tourist. I love that you're offering people an opportunity to listen to you, to learn from you, but most of all, Judy, to be inspired by you. There's so much more to say. We're going to continue this conversation another time about, could I really do this? And so perhaps we'll come back and we'll do a part 2 podcast conversation on just that single question, because in addition to the inspiration that I feel energetically from people, from what you're like, I call it voicing out and sharing, I also feel resistance from many more people to be like, well, she could do that, but I can't. So would you be willing to have that conversation?
I would be delighted to do that.
Great. Good.
Sometime perhaps in September or...
Perfect. That will be fantastic. I want to thank you so much for joining me today on this book show podcast. Your book is well worth my time. And thank you for all the energy that you put into creating the book. The story of how you created it is inside my own business model of how I help people in the second half of life really get into business from their passion. So Judy, I'm already looking forward to next time. Thank you. And take good care.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was a delight to be with you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.